Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Denny here with Team Fishing for Life. This is going to be the second part of my video that we talked about wacky style Cinco fishing this last year and kind of recapping our tournament year this year a little bit. If you haven't seen the previous video I did about the wacky style Cinco, the hook, the bait, kind of how I fish it and what success I had with it, you can go back and check that video out. This video, first of all, sponsored by Rob's Auto Service right there in my jersey. So thank you to Rob's Auto and his whole team there for sponsoring our fishing team, not just Darren and myself, but also the youth fishing team. We appreciate all the sponsorships. They allow us to go and do what we need to do and be able to afford to go to these tournaments and to pursue our passion and help teach these kids how to become better fishermen. So we really appreciate all our sponsors. So this video also will be sponsored by G. Loomis Rods and Shimano Reels. Shimano and G. Loomis sponsored us this year, and because of that sponsorship, I own a rod here, G. Loomis rod, that I never thought in my entire wildest dreams I would ever own one of these. We're not made of money, so a rod like this was kind of out of my price range. It's obviously something I wanted to have, and it's something that's very useful for tournament fishing, but for where I was at in life, I didn't know that I could go buy a bunch of these. But because of their sponsorship and with Shimano's sponsorship, we could afford to have the best equipment for what we're doing. And for this technique, this is the exact rod and reel I use, and I'll go over that right now. So, wacky style Cinco, weedless. First of all, the key is, to me, water clarity and what we're doing as far as how deep of water we're fishing. The most important of those two is the water clarity. So if the water is fairly clear, like for example when we're fishing Wilson Lake or we're fishing Table Rock Lake, I use a Sniper fluorocarbon, Sunline Sniper fluorocarbon, and I use 8-pound test line. We're not sponsored by Sniper, but if they would like to, or excuse me, it's not sponsored by Sunline, but if they'd like to sponsor us, we'd love that too. That line, even though I'm not sponsored by, I would say it's my favorite line by far. When I'm fishing spinning gear, lighter weight line, they're 12-pound stuff. When we're fishing a little heavier applications like swim baits and things like that, it's unbeatable. So Sunline 8-pound test line is what's on here right now. And in the clear water like Wilson or like Table Rock, that's the pound test I use. You probably know this already, some of you may not, so I'll go over it. But the lighter weight the line, and really in fluorocarbon, it doesn't really have to do with the fish seeing your line. It's not because it's clear water, oh, they'll see it. They could, but that's really not what it's about. To me, it's about it being more natural. The lighter weight the line, the more naturally this bait will float down. It'll sink down a lot more natural. Heavier weight line, it's going to still sink, but just not quite as naturally. So I really enjoy the lighter weight line if I have clear water to really make that bait float down and flutter a little better. And that's just my opinion. I will tell you that, if you're fishing a clear lake and you're fishing around docks, you might want to bump up to 10-pound. At the tournament at Wilson, Lucas, my son, who fished the high school Wilson tournament, he had a 10-pound test line on. And that's because we were throwing around a lot of dock cables and a lot of cover and a lot of sharp stuff down there. So we need a 10-pound test line. The 8-pound test line is a little more for open water. I have fished it around cover, but you just have to be very careful when you put that bait. You got to make sure you're casting on the outside edge of that cover as opposed to in the cover with that bait. Or you can go over the top of the cover, but even then it's a little risky. So 8-pound would be more for open water or a little more clear water, not as much cover. I go up to 10-pound if I am fishing around cover. And same thing, I do Sunline Sniper 10-pound fluorocarbon. So that's the first thing, is the line, and that line is awesome. Love that line. That line is super tough. It's just an amazing line. So like I said, I'm not sponsored by them, but if I could be, I would be. They're amazing. So just a free plug for them. You'll love their line if you ever get some. It's a little more expensive than some of the other cheap line, but for tournament fishing, it's worth every penny, so you don't lose that big fish. So the next thing is I'll go to the rod. The rod is by far the most important portion, besides the line, of this technique. With a wacky style Cinco, basically that hook is very small, and the bait's obviously fairly light. So the rod is very, very important to this technique, and you need a rod that still has some backbone, but it's got a little flexible tip. You gotta let those fish have it, and you want a little bit of bend to it. This is a G. Loomis, already the exact model. It's gonna be GCX on that. It's a 6'6", 6'6", a lot of times I'm fishing this, trying to skip it under docks, trying to do underhand roll casts, things like that. And so the shorter rod actually in this situation is better for me if I'm fishing docks or if I'm fishing the technique with this. I don't need a 7-foot rod for this. In fact, the 7-foot rod will just get in the way when I'm trying to do my roll cast or my skipping. So 6'6" is awesome. And then this one is just a fast action rod. It's a GCX 7830 S, and it's going to be SJR. So I think SJR stands for shaky head, something jig rod. I don't remember honestly, but SJR. So it's a GCX 783 S SJR, and it's been excellent. 6'6", like I said, it's rated for basically up to 15-pound test line and fast action. So it's sturdy enough to hold a big fish. I caught a lot of big fish on this year, and the key with it is when you cast this thing out, say underneath the dock or anywhere next to cover, like I said, not in the cover, but next to cover, and you feel that weight. You're just going to feel weight when the bass eats that sinking down. You reel down to them, and then depending on how they hit the bait, if I feel a little thunk, and this rod is extremely sensitive, so you can feel a little tap on your line. If you feel that tap, I don't set the hook like a man on this. You actually just kind of reel down, feel the tension, and then lean back into them. You know, I'm not going to snap it. I'm going to just lean into them. I'll reel down to where I feel pressure, and I'm going to pull straight back. And you let the rod do the work on that. So the second part to that is when you set that hook, and it's a 5-pounder, which we caught multiple of those this year, with lighter weight line, 8-pound test line. The reel is very, 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 very important as well. So the reason I like these reels the best, by far and away, best reels on the market in my opinion for what we do with them. This is a Shimano Stratic. This is a 2500 model, but a Shimano Stratic FLs, they have the CI4s, they have the new ones out too, they have the Vanford out, but I love the Stratics, it's just what I have. I generally get 3000 now. This one's a little older, it's a 2500. I like the 3000 because it takes up a little more line, and it just does a better job for me in general, but this was a 2500 that I used all year, and it did just fine as well. This reel here is honestly around, I'd say 17, 18 years old, and it still does an outstanding job. The thing about these reels, number one, it's smooth as far as on the reeling in. The bearings are awesome on it, but the drag is pretty smooth, and that's the biggest thing when you're fighting a larger fish and you're trying to bring a fish in. That drag, especially if you don't back reel, that's a whole nother video, but if you're using your drag, which a lot of times I do with a bigger fish with lighter pound line, is that drag is vital. It's got to be smooth. If it has any catch in it at all, especially those smallmouth, they're going to break your line. And big largemouth will as well when they do that digging and they go straight back down. Because you can't horse the fish in with a lighter weight line, rod, and reel. So this has been just outstanding. This Stratic has been money, and I've caught I don't know how many fish on this. This one's getting close to being retired. Like I said, 17 years old. It does a great job. I've got some new Stratics on the way here, so I'll probably put a nice new one on this nice rod to kind of match it. But this year, this reel was very, very, very great. Very sturdy, very healthy. Had no problems with it, no catches, nothing like that. Didn't lose any fish because the drag didn't go out. And like I said, that's a 17-year-old reel, so that's pretty awesome on that. So that's my setup for Wacky style Senko fishing. G Loomis rod, 6'6". It's basically, if you were to equate it, it'd be like a medium light. If you don't have the G Loomis, obviously, just a medium light rod. Shimano's got some really good ones in their lineup too that are medium light, that are excellent. But medium light's what I would advise for Senko fishing, for Wacky style Senko fishing. 8-pound test, and then just a reel that has a nice drag on it. Like I said, I use these Stratics and they're awesome. But if you can't afford the Stratic, just find a reel with a good drag on it. But if you can invest the money in a Stratic, it'll last you a long time. So that's another thing you have to keep in mind. So if you can invest a little bit more money and take care of your stuff, you're gonna make that reel last, a lot longer than most people will make a $60 or $80 reel last. This reel is closer to 200 or a little over that, but I made it last 17 years. How many $60 rods and reels would I have to replace in order to make it last 17 years? And that's the way I justify spending the money on it. But just again, with what we do in the tournament situations, I can't have any hiccups with my reels, my rods, none of my equipment. So the nice thing about this setup is it gave me no hiccups all year. It did the job, and it did it fabulously. So thank you again to our sponsors for helping me afford such nice equipment. If it wasn't for you, I definitely would not be able to afford that equipment. All the time, my wife and I, Aaron, were talking the other night that looking at what I have equipment-wise, lures, rods, reels, I mean, from where I started to where we are at now, as far as the kind of equipment, I'm just very blessed. I just feel very thankful to have the proper equipment to go out there and actually compete and not have that be a limitation for me. So I need every advantage I can get out there. So good equipment for me is an excellent thing. One quick thing, fishing the Wacky style Senko, just a couple location situations. Again, docks are amazing. Clear water is amazing. Any clear water, rocky points, anywhere where you think there's a fish. So that's the thing, is that, a fisherman, we generally get an idea like there should be a fish right there. And a lot of times there are, but a lot of times we don't catch them. This is one bait where, like, I know there's a fish there. You throw everything else at it and no bites. You know what? Take the time, cast that out there, count it down, let it sink all the way to the bottom. And on the retrieve, all I do on the retrieve in clear water is I don't twitch it up. I actually just pull it up just a little bit and then drop my tip all the way down. Letting it sink on slack line is very important. A lot of anglers make the mistake. They cast out and they want to feel their bait sinking, but you don't want to do that with a Wacky style situation. Wacky style situation, you can watch your line, but I do not want to have any tension on that line whatsoever. I want a completely slack line, not too much slack, obviously. You want to be able to get to it pretty quick, but you want to have slack line to where you just kind of watch it, and then every once in a while you can just pick up on it, let it drop back down. And it takes a good couple, 3 minutes to reel in and cast properly. Generally speaking, of casting targets, but every once in a while we'll fish points with it too, and that takes a really long time to reel it in. But if you know there's a fish there, just cast it out there, give it time. Sometimes they'll actually want it all the way on the bottom, they'll want dead stick. I mean, you just don't move it at all. You let it sit there for a little bit, you twitch it up or move it up, and they'll come get it. Now, clear water, like I said, I lift it up, and every day is different, but lift it up. On dirtier water, generally speaking, I do twitch it a little bit. So if it's a little dirtier water, let's say under a foot visibility, right? Let's say it's a foot or under. I don't really throw it in super muddy water usually. I have, but not usually. This is more of a, at least 8 inches or above on visibility. But on the dirtier water, I'll actually just kind of let it sink all the way first, and then I'll reel it in. I'll just kind of jiggle it and let it sink again, jiggle it. By working a little faster, I keep it a little more moving in that dirtier water so they can pick up on those vibrations. Those fish can actually sense that vibration in the water, and they'll come get it. So, but again, you kind of have to play it by ear. Depends on the day, depends on what you're trying to get the fish, or where you're trying to get the fish, what they're feeding all the time. So every day is different. So there's a couple retrieves, either pull up, let it sink, or just kind of twitch it, let it sink, twitch it, let it sink. I do 1, 2, let it sink, 1, 2, let it sink. A lot of times that'll work. And then sometimes real dirty water, I'll literally just reel it real slow and just kind of twitch it all the way for about 5 or 6 seconds and let it sink for about 2 seconds, and kind of reel it, just twitch it and let it sink again once it sink all the way to the bottom. And those retrieves tend to work really well for that. So that's kind of how I do it. Like I said, when you hook those fish, you just kind of lean into them. You feel the bite, you kind of reel down to it, and you pull back and you lean into them. You're not going to set the hook or jerk their head off. You're just going to let the line, the rod, the reel, and the hook do the work. They've already swallowed that Yamamoto bait. Like I said, Yamamoto is awesome. They're going to eat that bait. So they've got it in there. A lot of guys set the hook too hard and pull it out of their mouths. A lot of guys set the hook a little too early. So especially with smallmouth, just in the name, right? Their mouth's a little smaller, so they have to suck that in, and you'll feel a tap, and then that means they've sucked it in. But a lot of times that bait's sideways like a cigar because their mouths are small. So they may have the hook, or they may have it crooked. They may not have the hook. A lot of times they give it another second or two because they're gonna suck it all the way down, and then your hookup ratio is gonna be a lot better. So don't always set the hook on that first tap, especially fishing for smallmouth. Largemouth, a little different scenario there, but I always tell people smallmouth, give them just another second to let it get in there, so that way make sure you don't miss any hookups. But that's my rod, reel, line setup for that. If you guys have any questions, just let me know in the comments. I'm happy to answer whatever I need to answer on that. We're here to teach you, instruct you, inform you, and I'm always gonna be honest with you in this channel. I'm gonna tell you what worked. I'm gonna tell you where we failed, where we succeeded. I'm not gonna lie to you and over exaggerate how good we did or how bad we did on something. It's going to be the truth from me. So, and I'm happy to share information. I'm not a professional angler. I'm nothing like that. I'm just a normal guy who goes to work like you do. So most of you guys watching, you're fishing like I am, a weekend warrior. I'm here to try to help younger kids and weekend warriors maybe cut out some learning curve, and just to help you become better fishermen and enjoy the outdoors, enjoy God's creation. So that's why we're here, and hopefully you learned something from this. If you have any questions about rods or reels, again, may not be able to afford the G Loomis, may not be able to afford a Shimano right now. That's okay. Just hit me up in the comments. I can tell you what rod and reel setup. Tell me your price range, and I can kind of direct you and say, hey, this is a good one. I've used this one for a long time. It worked really well. So, all right, that's it. And then I'll catch you on the next one. The next video I'll do is probably going to be about some other winning baits we had success on this year in tournaments and just fun fishing. So be looking for that, and I'll kind of go over what we had. And then eventually we'll go over specific lakes and tell you where we fished, how we fished, water clarity, and hopefully you can learn something from those lake breakdowns for next year coming up in March, April, May, June, July, where it'll help you kind of do a little bit of legwork ahead of time and know kind of where at least last year we had success on and where we didn't have success. So thanks for watching. Have a good night.